SALT project community. Thank you, Sage. To the SALT project community open hour. I am hosting this week. I'm filling in for Janae and Jeff, who are both out on PTO. So just a quick mention, we are on all of the social media platforms. So YouTube, obviously GitHub, we are Slack. If you are unaware, we have a community Slack. There's information on the website. We're also on Twitch, where Wayne does his weekly testing clinic. Occasionally Tyler does Twitch sessions on Pop and Item. We're on Reddit. You can find us on LinkedIn as well as Facebook and Twitter. So here's our agenda for today. So we just have some general updates. We'll talk about SaltConf, which is coming up. We'll talk about working groups, and I actually have some comments, some questions for the community about working groups, but we'll get to that in a bit. We'll mention the SALT enhancement proposals, as well as release updates, and then we'll finish up with Q&A, which is everyone's opportunity to obviously ask us questions or provide answers. So we do virtual meetups once a month on the third Wednesday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. The July meetup was canceled, but hopefully we'll be picking those back up in August. For anyone who hasn't attended an open hour in a few weeks, every week we say this is the last chance for SaltStack swag, but I think there's still stuff there. So please go to the store and buy stuff and like get rid of all the inventory so we can stop talking about it, and so we can take this out of the slide deck. There's like some really heavy discounts, not to the level of Shane's desired discount of 100% off yet, but we're getting close. So if you're interested in sharing your knowledge about SALT, about your use of SALT, or you're interested in learning about the component of SALT, we are looking for blog posts. So between 400 and 800 words, send us the information to saltproject@vmware.com. And we'll get it published. So as I said, this is a great way if you are looking to learn a particular component of the SALT project, like a particular module, a particular engine or a beacon. This is a great way to kind of go through and learn about it, and then through your words in the blog post, teach other people. So SaltConf is coming up in November of this year. It will be a virtual conference again. The call for speakers is actually closing really soon in 4 days. So if you haven't submitted your proposal to speak yet, now is the time to do that. So if you need if you have any questions, or you need any advice on like topics, or if you have a topic idea but you're not sure it fits right, feel free to reach out to any of the core team members on community Slack, and just ask us if you think it's a good topic. We'll be more than happy to give you feedback. So first open hour of every month, we try and do a captain's highlight. So the next one will be on the 5th. And as I alluded to, I had some questions, comments regarding the working groups. But we'll get to that when we get to the Q&A section. So we do have SALT enhancement proposals. We don't have any listed here to particularly highlight, but there are a couple that I wanted to just draw attention to. I think I mentioned in the last open hour that we have a new updated SEP on the inclusive language. So if you haven't taken a look at that one, I encourage everyone to kind of look at that. It's an updated, more like SALT specific enhancement proposal on inclusive language. And it's not one of the things that we mentioned last week that wanted to again highlight is that proposal to be inclusive, to have inclusive language in SaltStack is not like the be all end all final draft, final implementation of it. It will be an ongoing process that will probably take us several months, possibly years, to get to the right place. So our release updates, and hopefully everyone will, if these are not accurate, will chime in. Sage, Shane, I'm looking at you guys, Derek. So our 3003.2 release is scheduled for August 4th of 2021. And then our Silicon release, which will be 3004. We're looking for the RC release candidates to be August 25th. And then our general availability to be September 22nd of this year. So really breeze through those, but we're at to the Q&A part. So I'm going to start it off. I'm going to kick us off with a question that I've been pondering for a couple of weeks now with our working groups. So we have several working groups. We have one dedicated to Mac OS, documentation, a new one with security, Windows, as well as like testing and release. And we've noticed over the last few months that kind of attendance on those working groups once a month is kind of dropping off a bit, dropping off a little bit. So we're kind of like, the working groups are not ours. They're not the core teams. They belong to the community. So we really want to hear from everyone what everyone wants, what you all want from the working groups. So like where you see them going, if they're needed still, if there's still interest in them. So yeah, I'll kick off the Q&A with the discussion. Hopefully people have some thoughts around the working groups. Like, what do you want to see from them? And crickets. Okay, I guess if no one has any thoughts on the working groups, I mean, feel free to put them in chat too, like in the Zoom chat, if you don't feel comfortable unmuting yourself and speaking on the Zoom. But as I said, like the working groups are for the community and owned by the community. So we really want to make sure that the community is getting more out of them. So Andrew says, I wish I had the time to join one. It would be fun to join, but not sure I'd be able to have the time for it. That's a good comment. It's good feedback. So do you feel like the times when the working groups meet doesn't work, or is it like the meeting time doesn't work, or the day that they meet, or is it not like meeting as often as would be beneficial?
Yeah, I'll just go on voice now that we're here. No, so I work a lot, and then I'm also a single parent. So I would love to be a part of one. I don't know what the time requirement is, and so I would hate to sign up for one and then, find that in like 2 weeks I can't thoroughly participate. I would hate to let the group down in that sense.
Yeah, that's obviously like a valid concern. It is, I mean, I don't know, and like other people feel free to like correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't feel like unless you're, which even then I was gonna say, like, being a captain of a working group is a bit of a time commitment, because you're the captain of the working group. But even like attending a working group, the meetings are once a month, and they usually last for like an hour or so, depending on what the group wants to talk about. So it doesn't seem like a huge commitment, but obviously, like, work and life and family is priority. So I guess what would you suggest on like how we can like fix that or better communicate, like maybe better communicate what the expectations are around that?
No, I think you did a pretty good job there. I was clearly missing a key piece of information about, and I'm sure I'm sure you guys have said it multiple times, so it's clearly on me. The once a month, for an hour, uh, certainly does change the mathematics, if you will, on time consumption. So, yeah, I guess my only follow up is, where is a list of the working groups?
They should be on the solveproject.io website.
That's usually on the wiki on GitHub as well.
Yeah, which I think is also should be. Yeah, if you go to solveproject.io and then the top tab, the far right one that says participate, there's a link that has working groups, and there's also one that has calendar, which I believe has the when the meeting, the dates for the working groups are. It's also on that working groups page.
That looks great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
If I could jump in for a second, Gareth, I don't
Yeah,
think.
yeah, please.
I was speaking from my point of view, but I think probably Andrew has. I think initially had the correct impression, and it has the same problem I do. Is that the problem is not necessarily the meeting times, but to carry out the work of the working group, there's a time commitment outside of the actual meetings, right? Like otherwise the working groups are just sitting there discussing things, but nothing ever comes out of them because there's no one, if no one's working outside of the working group meetings, then there's the goal of the working group is not being advanced. So that's my main problem right now, is finding time to do the work outside of the working groups, which is why I've been keep scaling back a bunch of orgs even outside of Salt that I'm part of, to try and free up some more time. But yeah, I think that was probably Andrew's biggest problem, is not necessarily just attending the working group, but actually doing work outside of the working group. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew. Yeah.
Oh no. You've got that one right on.
And Gary, we talked about it before, and I like what you had said before, that we actually thought that code jams and like the docs jams was a better use of time and work, that we had a goal of something in a short amount of time to get it done, and then to try to reach that goal to take a day or half a day, that those seem to work better. Is that right?
Yeah. At least for me personally, where I can schedule a day to be like.
I'll just mute Pedro since he's speaking in Portuguese and it's lovely. But thank you, Pedro.
Yeah, so at least for me, yeah, it was easier to schedule like half a day or a day, I don't know, once a quarter or something. I think probably the challenge, the biggest challenge there is, and I'm sure any of the captains will tell you, preparing for those jams is a lot of work, right?
Yeah, but I think I think that's valuable information for us to have, that maybe we should focus more on having those and really having them every quarter, to a quarter, doing tests and docs or whatever it is that we can focus around is probably maybe a better use of time. And we do have some long-standing working groups that are running well, and we can continue with those, but maybe we don't need more of them at this time. Yet we'll still be open to creating one if it comes up and that's available, but we probably need to focus more on those code jams.
One of the things I noticed too, I have noticed since we started the working groups, the ones that have been really successful are the ones that have either several short projects or like one single long-term project. where like they have a goal, they have like something that they're working towards. Like a good example is the Mac OS working group, where like each time the goal is to make sure that installing and running Salt on Mac OS is a good experience for people. Like it just works out of the box mostly. Obviously, like it's not perfect yet, but otherwise the working group wouldn't be necessary. But I think the Windows working group was a similar has similar goal in mind, and similar projects. So just tossing that out there, something to think about for the working groups that seem like they're kind of maybe a little stagnant, maybe a little like lost in terms of what their purpose is, coming up with a project and a goal. Excuse me, might help in that area.
I'll just say that our last working group meeting, we had a guy attend from the hospital. So, I question everybody else's dedication.
That is impressive. I don't know if I had that level of dedication.
On
And
the flip
maybe-
side of it, maybe, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Gary, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say on the flip side, maybe he was so bored of being in the hospital that it was a good break.
Maybe.
I mean,
maybe
that is
some of those-
impressive.
It is.
That is impressive. What would have been really impressive is if the person had like recruited other people from the hospital to join the working group.
Oh, there you go. Well, and maybe we need to look at some of the working groups that have lost momentum and convert them into some sort of code jam that has more focus. That's actually a really interesting idea. I hadn't thought about it in that way, but maybe that's true, and maybe we need to consider that. Because as big things, or do both at times, because like for the Mac working group, I think there's times that we see lots of work happening, and then there's other times that's a little bit lull, and so maybe it needs both. I don't know. That would be a really interesting thing to consider for sure.
Yeah, I really like the idea of the focused specific code jams. We could, I mean, we like the core team, we can help out and identify a number of issues that like they're kind of specific to like Windows or Mac, or like security or documentation, things like that. And that could be like kind of obviously not like this is what you must do as the code jam, the working group code jam, but suggestions of like these are like things that would be good to focus on. Any other comments anyone has on working groups? Again, feel free to drop them in the chat if you're not comfortable speaking on Zoom.
I know later today we have another docs working group, and at the moment we have a lot of issues created for if people wanted to get involved and work on documentation. We have everything from really easy, well, I shouldn't say really easy. We have some well-documented, more straightforward issues with documentation, and in order to help assist in fixing them. And then we have a lot more complex ones that have to do with people who are a lot more experienced with SALT. And so if people wanted to get involved too, they could jump into that docs working group, which is for today. That's later at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. And otherwise, I've really liked the docs jams that we've done historically. They've resulted, I think, in new contributors or new standards even for our own docs stuff. And have helped to improve our contributing docs because of the fact that, you know, people are struggling, having difficulty with it. We had to put in that extra work to ensure it was ready for either the docs jam or after the docs jam based on people going through them. Yeah, and so it's I think what I'd like to do, I like the fact that we're starting to schedule that monthly working group recap of things, because I think that'll be a good way to show almost like a highlight reel of this is the stuff we've done as of late, or some stuff that's come out of our working group and things maybe we're looking at going forward. Because I was either thinking of something like that or of maybe in the future even demoing something in the open hour.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Derek. Okay. Does anyone else, I mean, if no one else has any other questions about working groups, we can move on to any other topics. If anyone had any specific questions they wanted to ask, now is the time.
Yeah, I had one question. It's about log rotations across the different OS platforms. I see that for Windows, there's a minion config setting that allows you to set the max size of a log and the number of logs you're going to keep. But that's Windows only. And then for like Linux and maybe Mac as well, there's a separate log rotate, either execution module or state module, one of those. I was wondering why those are separated out into different processes. And is there a chance that they get brought all under the min config settings?
Yeah, that's a good question. Pedro, are you available? You probably know the most about logging of all of us.
Sorry, I was driving. Mind repeat that long question?
Yeah, sure thing. So logging and the process of rotating logs, setting max log sizes, and then making sure that you're keeping only X amount of rotated logs is a separate process for Windows than it is for Linux and I guess Mac OS. For Windows, the process is a minion configuration setting. And then for Linux, it's a separate module. I was wondering why that was the case and if there were any plans to bring that all under minion configuration settings.
Well, you should be able to use log rotation just by using the configuration files, independent of which platform you're on. There are several configuration keys for that. And that particular module that you mentioned that is used to rotate the logs, I'm currently unaware of that one. So I don't know why that was required to add, if there's a problem with the configuration that we have, because basically we are using Python's built-in configuration handlers, and there's one that rotates the logs.
Yeah, and so I sent a link to documentation, and it says that it's still only currently supported on Windows inside of the minion configurations. Is it just that the doc has not been updated, or is this still an operating system specific limitation?
I do not know offhand. My
So
suggestion.
Sorry, Pedro. I was just going to say, since you're driving, I was going to say that the setting that Andrew linked to was the log rotate max bytes setting for the minion.
Yeah. Off the top of my head, I don't know why it says that currently. So what I would suggest is, if you could open a ticket, feel free to ping me or assign it to me, because worst case, there's something deep in the code that we need to fix to support all platforms, or in the best case, it's just a small doc fix. Sorry, I don't know the proper answer to your question right now.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just looking at the documentation for the setting you linked to, Andrew, it does say for other platforms, we rely on tools like log rotate to handle rotation of logs. Whereas I don't believe log rotate, the binary external tool log rotate, is available on Windows. So that could be why we have that specific setting.
And I think I even found a, I'll go back and look, and I'll put it in the SEP if it's there, but I think I even at one point found an execution module in Salt that does deal with rotating logs, but it does not work for Windows.
Okay. Yeah, the one you mentioned, log rotates, I hadn't personally used it myself, but it looks like it is a module to interact with the log rotate tool. So if log rotate is not available on Windows, then that would make sense. And it actually calls out in the virtual, under virtual, that it's not supported on Windows.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I'm not sure that it wouldn't work on another OS, the max rotate, the log max bytes. I mean, I think it's just basic file commands. I don't think it's doing any special sauce that's Windows specific. If you needed to get that to work somewhere else, I don't know that it would be a big deal if it doesn't already work.
Yeah, like Pedro said, it could just be at one point it only worked on Windows and no one had tried it, or no one needed it on other platforms.
Like, I think they implemented it for Windows because there wasn't a log rotate mechanism. But I don't think that means it doesn't work anywhere else. But I think the logging is handled by the operating system itself on Linux and not necessarily by Salt. But I don't know about that.
It's probably accurate.
Yeah, that'd be either way. It'd be great to have a single, truly cross-platform process, even if, like, on the back end, the configuration just calls the log rotate, execution module. It'd be nice to just have one way of dealing with it consistently inside of my network. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So Vic just said that syslog isn't managing Salt's logs, so we're just dumping logs on Linux as well.
I had a quick question around Delta Proxy. Gareth, do you think before, what's the next release?
Silicon?
Silicon. Do you think you're going to be able to get around to fixing the serial startup issue?
I hope so. I'm hoping to spend some time looking at that again. It's unfortunately not as simple a fix as I was hoping for, but it might be something that gets pushed to the release after silicone.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to plan my way forward. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Any other questions anyone has that we can potentially, or not even questions, but just like discussion topics that you're interested in discussing?
Just to mention, sorry, I had another meeting that took up the first half hour of this. I don't know if Tyler's in the meeting. He is not. We've begun working on making Tiamat pluggable backends a thing. Tyler's got a PR in right now to Tiamat to flesh out the pluggable side for Tiamat itself. And then we'll be moving PyInstaller into its own kind of Tiamat-PyInstaller plugin. As well as PyOxidizer, since I have that working. We're still working on Nuicta for a backend plugin as well. But basically what this means is that people will be able to use Tiamat to build binaries using multiple build backends provided for Python by various third-party sources to, whichever one suits their needs they can use. And so look out for that here soon. I'm currently reviewing his PR and going through his documentation. But that's it's a pretty big milestone that we've been talking about since basically last year around the SALT conference. And this will bump Tiamat up to a 8.0 release.
That's cool. That sounds like a really useful feature. Good to have.
Oh, and I don't know if this is the right place to bring it up. I know I've mentioned it to you, Sage, but it would be great to get some sort of either working group, temporary one, or just meeting setup period where we could have the various players for Tiamat and Salt PKG get together and discuss what we're currently working on, or blockers and stuff. Because right now there's a lot of separate work occurring without a lot of communication, at least in my view. I don't know if it's different within SALT. It would be great to be able to collaborate on that stuff and discuss those things on a weekly or monthly basis.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll help facilitate.
Thank you. And I've already volunteered for captain for that if you need one, if it's a working group.
Sounds good.
If no one has any other questions or anything else they want to talk about, we can end early and give everyone back some of their time. Last call. I don't see Wayne on here. Oh, Andrew unmuted. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I do have one noob question. Where's the link to submit a SEP?
It's actually on the project, the SALT's salt stack organization in GitHub that I just linked to in Zoom chat.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
I would ask that too. Do you want us to start proposing stuff like the swappable backends for Tiamat as SEPs as well, Sage? Tyler and I have kind of been shooting from the hip over there and doing what we do. I don't know if you want to subjugate that to the same process.
I think it depends on how big it is and where Tiamat for salt is still in beta, but it's being used elsewhere. We may just need to talk about it first. And I think that's fine. Maybe we need to do that in this monthly meeting or whatever we're going to do and then decide. That's probably our first agenda topic.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, if it needs to follow the same process, I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, I just don't know either. I think we just need to dive in and discuss. Maybe.
I don't know. I'm sure Pedro has feelings about that.
Sounds like it.
Pedro's dog definitely does.
That's right.
He seems a little upset about not having SEPs.
The dog likes the process.
Yeah.
Sorry for that noise.
It's okay. I now know who to answer to now if I don't get my SEP right.
I'm gonna have to answer to the dog. It's got a bigger bite than Pedro does.
I know that
Pedro,
sounded scary.
yeah. Pedro, did you have any thoughts on that, or do you want to save that for like the first meeting?
No. It looks good. My concerns were initial. So we want to try to get our Tiamat installer stuff out of beta, and I'm not against
I was meeting with Megan about that actually too, Pedro.
Can you repeat?
I've been meeting with Megan about that actually too, to see what's blocking her on the salt PKG side for Tiamat so that we can drill those down. And I've been keeping notes on all the stories I need to create for Tiamat for that, as well as for the back end stuff, because there's going to be some more stories coming out of that. And the Windows stuff as well. I've been working with Shane Lee.
Tyler. Today was actually an awesome win. Megan and I met with Shane. We actually got a Tiamat build for Windows working. It's a one dir. It's not a single binary yet.
Right.
But it's working.
We got the one dir working on the call.
Yeah. That's really working. But yeah, let's
I should be able to with Pi Oxidizer backend. Like right now I have Pi Oxidizer working for Linux, but since we can build for any triplet on that, and the tier 1 and tier 2 support for Pi Oxidizer is quite large because it's the Rust triplets. We should be able to support building Linux, Windows, and Darwin all from a single host with Pi Oxidizer too. So again, it really comes down to which backends need to be used for which. I mean, Pi installer is still going to have to be used for some things like AIX. Rust has no support for it, even though IBM adopted LLVM a while ago.
Yeah.
But just because I know, speaking to Sage and to Murphy, there is the AIX code is proprietary, I think, or at least the idea is to keep it within Salt itself. So Pi install will actually be able to work that.
Actually, the AIX is going to be open source too. It's really just a question of resources to get all of the native millions into the open source. We just got the Arista pipeline working, and now I'm building the 3003.1 and testing as we speak. So as things get fixed and we have resources available, we'll be getting them moved into the open source side. So everything goes, including AIX, Solaris 10, Solaris 11, Juniper, and Arista.
Nice. Yeah, if you get that open sourced, I can start working on a Rust bootloader for Pi Oxidizer as well.
Yeah.
My only concern would be that, for example, with Pi installer, we figured out a way to inject additional Python dependencies after compilation, and those would be picked up.
The Tiamat pip package.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Oxidizer I think it's Oxidizer that allows you to also load additional dependencies after being compiled, but I haven't gone down that hole. So
Yeah,
Salt, but this is particular to Salt, is
right.
finding out a way for us to inject additional dependencies after being compiled. But that's it.
Go ahead.
I would add two things to that. One is at the moment, the version for AIX that we just released doesn't have the pip installer because we ran into issues on AIX for things, Mont Linux headers and stuff. So that isn't there. And secondly, all I can think of, Randy, is what a brave person to put Rust on AIX and get it working.
Well, stuff needs doing. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, if you get that open source, I can look at what you're doing with PyInstaller and try to get that working with Rust and PyOxidizer.
Yeah.
I'm actually, Pedro, currently running down doing pip installs post install. I think it's going to fall prey to the same thing that PyInstaller does, where if the pip package that you're installing has system requirements that weren't present during build, those packages will fail to install. But we'll see. I don't have it fully fleshed out yet.
Randy, do you have access to an AIX machine? And if so, what versions and
processing? I don't currently, but if we have anything we can do in, like, say, Cirrus or anything like that, that would be great, because then I could, you know, actually test it, because otherwise I have to pass you the code.
IBM have a community program up and running, and they provide access to, for 2 weeks, with an extension of another 2 weeks, to the hardware for both Power Linux and AIX and their other stuff. So if you were to go in as a community and see if you could get access, that's what we're using at the moment, is partnering as a community, getting access to machines to build and stuff. So
okay, so you get about a month total.
Yeah, they give you 2 weeks and you can extend it essentially.
Can you do that multiple times?
You can get out up to 3 machines at a time in a project, and then
I meant like multiple links of time. Okay, perfect. Yeah, that'll work for a build pipeline fine then.
Yeah, you've got to go through their VPN and stuff to get access to the machines and stuff, but it's pretty straightforward. And also on AIX, since they bought Red Hat, they got a lot of RPMs for AIX that are pretty up to date.
Outstanding.
And I do want to say, I know that from a pipeline perspective for those native Minion repositories, I know that we'd have to probably go through a review of how the pipelines are configured and set up, and what the process is for making outside contributor access a thing, if they're going to be public facing, or if we have to approach it perhaps in a different way. So I'm not quite sure. I'd have to see what Bryce's thoughts are on that, but also if there's anything we have to do with that from a VMware side of things.
Yeah, we'll have to nail down permissions. Probably that should probably be a topic of the first meeting as well, is figuring out perms for users and contributors.
It might be a case of that contributors need to go and get their own access from IBM, as I can see some fraught relationships and red tape waiting for decisions between VMware and IBM. I mean, having been at IBM, like you, Randy, you know how bureaucratic they can be. Could be a year before you get a answer out of them.
Yeah, I am familiar.
I think we all just need to be on the same page of what is the fastest way, and maybe write that down as our process. And that's probably what this working group needs to just lay out, so how that works, so that we can be fast and iterate.
Definitely for like local testing, or testing that the contributors are making before pushing it up. I would say that should fall to personal accounts, but yeah, we'll need to discuss that about the pipeline.
Good discussion.
All right, last call for any more questions, any more discussion topics? This has been real, excuse me, this has been really good discussions, good questions. And I don't see Wayne on the call, but I have a really terrible, corny joke to end us with.
Well, now you've mentioned it, so you got to go through.
Oh no, I'm going for it. Yeah, no, there's no holding me back. So why are pirates really bad at learning the alphabet?
Why?
They always get lost at sea.
And here I thought it was going to be something with R.
You know, when I first heard the person telling it, it was like it was a street band performer was told the joke before he started his set, and I fully expected it to be like an R joke, but it was a C joke. There was much groaning.
My son approves of that joke, Gareth.
Kid approved. That's how you know it's a good one. All right. Thanks everyone for attending our open hour today. It's a really good one. So until next week.
Happy Thursday.
Bye-bye.
Bye everyone.